Hey everybody, this is Sweta Ragmi, your career consultant from Canada. I teach do's and don'ts to job seekers in Canada, and especially newcomers and laid off workers. Why? Because I have walked a mile in their shoes. Today, I have a guest, job search expert, LinkedIn top voice, Hannah Mason, and she's an expert in job search as well, especially with regards to the Dubai market because she's lived there and she's joining us from UK today. Let us know where you guys are joining us from. Like and share if you could. This could help a lot of people around the world. Hannah, welcome to my show. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Sweta. It's so good to be doing this live session with you. It's funny because we were just talking before the session. We've been connected on LinkedIn for a couple of years, and LinkedIn's just amazing for getting to know different people. But it's our first time going live together, and I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, as Sweta said, I lived in Dubai for 8 years. I worked there as a recruiter, recruiting for the legal market. And I'm now based in the UK, but help people internationally with their job search. So I do CV writing, interview coaching, help people with their job search strategy, and really looking forward to discussing lots of different topics with Sweta today.
Awesome. We have more than 100 people, 150 people or something joining us on LinkedIn. So hopefully this is going to be a very good session for those who really want to know what's going on in the market in Dubai. I do have a lot of questions for you as a resume writer myself. Sometimes I get confused with the format that Dubai actually uses it. And there are people around in Dubai, they come with the same format. And I'm like, oh, did it work in Dubai? They're like, yeah. And then I've coached people in Dubai as well. And some of the resume I've seen, they've made it in interviews. So I do have a lot of questions. I'm confused myself. So let's actually go into it right away. Resume. Let's talk about resume first. I see a lot of pictures on the resume. And you know what? I've also seen the date of birth. I've also seen personal information. Plus, if they are legally entitled to work, like so many things, I felt like I cringe every time I saw it. Guess what? It's completely normal, but I've been hearing mixed thing on it. Some people say it's not normal. Some people say it's normal. Tell us all about it. If someone wants to move to Dubai and looking for a job, what's normal on a resume world?
Dubai, it can be really difficult to figure out what the standard format is because there really is no one sort of standard CV format. Dubai is an amazing place because you have people from all over the world living there, and you have recruiters from all over the world recruiting there. And so you get kind of all these different styles and you really see a bit of everything. I think one of the main differences between Dubai and markets like Canada or the UK is that there are much fewer rules in terms of equal hiring opportunities. And so whereas in Canada, and I think in the UK, you're not actually allowed to give certain personal information about yourself on your CV because it can be seen as discrimination. In Dubai, they don't really have the same regulations. And so you can put whatever information you want. And there are some employers that request all that information. So there are some employers that want to know your marital status, want to know your date of birth, want to see a photo. But I think the important thing to understand is there's actually a lot of employers that aren't interested in that information. And certainly in certain industries, by including all of that information, you perhaps make your CV look a bit more junior, or you make it look like you're a bit out of touch with that industry. So I think it's really important to seek advice from a recruiter who's actually recruiting in your market and in your industry in terms of what is required on the CV. So as I mentioned, I recruited for the legal sector and for a lot of international law firms and big international companies. And generally, they don't want to see a photo and they don't want to know every single thing about you. They just want to know, what's your work experience? What can you bring to the role? And so I would advise lawyers and especially senior candidates not to include that information. So I know it is a bit confusing because there's, as I said, there's lots of different standards. I think a good thing to do is to look at the job adverts for roles you're applying for and see what information is commonly requested.
Got it.
And that's perhaps a good guidance then in terms of what you should put on your CV or your resume.
That's a good point. Now, question for you: have you ever gotten into the point that where you submitted the resume just the way you thought it would be, which is without the personal informations and pictures and whatnot? Have you ever gotten back rejections, like because we want more, we want this? Like, are those normal to actually do it? Reject the resume based on what you're not providing them? Do they do that?
I think if you've got the right skills and the right experience, but you've missed off some personal information that the company wants to know, then most good recruiters will contact you and will ask you for that information. So for example, I would often recruit roles that were looking for bilingual candidates who could speak English and Arabic. And if I got a CV of a great candidate and they didn't have that information on their CV, I would contact them and just ask that question. So I think it's very rare that you'd be disqualified from a role because you didn't include some personal information or some details that they were looking for, as long as you've addressed the main points in the job description.
Okay.
Then that's the most important thing. So I wouldn't stress too much about that. If a recruiter is doing that, then it's perhaps not a great company to work for in the first place if they're disqualifying you on those kind of small points.
Got it. Okay, very good point. So that makes me think as well, because there is market out there. There's a specific employers, they are looking for personal information, and the pictures on the resume, it's completely normal. That's what I'm hearing. It's not normal. When I see it, it's like, wow, right? When someone moves, I'll tell you what, when someone moves from Dubai to Canada, I work with a lot of people, newcomers, right? And Dubai happens to be the city people I tend to get a lot. Yeah. So that most people have those same kind of format, which is the pictures, date of birth, personal information, including references as well, like the name too, on the resume. And it's completely normal there. And when I start working on the resume, it's hard to change that mindset because they're usually used to the same kind of system. And it's the other example that I wanted to talk about is what about the Fortune companies who are recruiting all around the world? Do you feel like when you go onto that format, personal information format and the pictures format, do you think it works against them? Or do you think you recommend them to just follow the standard, which has like no date of birth, like, no personal information? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you're applying to a big international company in Dubai, I think it's better to not include a photo and to not include too much personal information. So I think personal information that is quite useful is nationality, perhaps your visa status, because your employer sponsors your visa and that information might be important to them to establish whether they can sponsor you. So, for instance, if you're already on your husband's visa, that's perhaps useful information to include because then they don't have to sponsor you. There are certain nationalities which at different times have restrictions on visas. So that information can be useful. Certainly your languages can be useful. But I think aside from that, I've seen CVs that have height and weight and all of these things. And that's really very, very rarely needed. I'd argue it's probably never needed, but including that information when you're applying to a Fortune 500 or an international company, I think can make you look a bit out of touch with that company's culture, where they're really focused on, that kind of core information and your core experience and education and what you can offer to the role. So Yeah, I know it's a little bit of a difficult kind of one to answer, but I don't know if that kind of answers your
It
question.
does. Yeah, it does. What I'm hearing is, for me, who actually helps people, international client, when they land in Canada, now I can actually talk to them about it. Hey, it's normal, it's okay, but you got to change this. Some people reach out to me. I'll give you one example, couple of example. By the time sometime they fail the interview and they find me from the Dubai market or like an international market, and then they say, you know what, I've gotten the interview and I've failed so much interviews. Can you coach me an interview? And which I've done that. And then what boggled me was when people started sending me this resume, and these are Fortune 500 company, pick that resume, which had the pictures, which had all the personal information, including, as you said, visa information, can I drive or not, my religion, my father's name, and everything. And we're talking about Fortune 500 company that somehow got into the HR's hand. Now the person's calling me for, okay, I need interview coaching with you. And I have to go through the resume, obviously, but I'm looking at it. And that's when I second guessed myself. I was like, how is it even possible? Here we are all singing the same song of, listen, it has to be certain format, no pictures, no DOB to avoid the discrimination. They don't need it. But I've literally seen those resumes picked up by the Fortune companies. And guess what? The interview happened. It was not even Dubai's interview, like, some people in-house, but these are all from UK actually, or US, interviewing them, recruiters, and these are not even outsourcing company. These are from that company. And that's when I was like, what's going on? I'm so confused now, right? So I didn't bother even say, hey, your resume needs work. It was working in that market, but it's not going to work in here. And you're so right. It's out of touch. What are your thoughts on it? How do you now go about handling those kind of like people who have those? What do you recommend if they are targeting those people? They're still getting into, you might have a pushback. What do you tell those people, like the resume fixed?
I mean, I think what you're talking about is because Dubai is so international. I think recruiters, good recruiters, are good at dealing with lots of different CV and resume formats and kind of just looking at the experience and finding the candidate that they need, because you have people applying from all different nationalities, all different countries that have different ways of writing CVs. I think that's probably why you're finding that, why you're surprised. Oh, I'm surprised that CV got through. It's probably because the recruiter's used to seeing so many different kind of styles of CV and actually kind of pushing through that and looking for, is this a good candidate and is this the type of person I want to hire? But that being said, you shouldn't just use that as an excuse to not improve your CV, not improve your resume. If your current format is working, great. But if it's not, then you may need to just look at it and think of how that can be improved. Think about your target audience. Yes, one format might get through, but there may be another that's going to be more preferable and going to even increase your chances further. So I think it's good just to really think about what kind of company you're applying for and what sort of format they're more likely to want to see from
Absolutely.
you.
That's a great point. Now, that comes with a lot of, it's now let's go back to this ATS. We're going to talk about it, right? And we've always said that, certain things are not, because I've seen the columns and I've seen all those, and you've seen those resumes, especially in that kind of market.
Yeah,
international market. I see a lot of columns in Excel sheet and pretty design and everything. And I felt like, wow, this resume didn't even make it through the ATS. What are your thoughts about that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, for anyone watching who doesn't know, ATS is applicant tracking system, and that basically stands for the software that recruiters use to help them sort through all the applications they receive. I think there's a misconception that this software rejects CVs if they don't meet certain formats, and that's not true. As far as I know, any ATS system I've used isn't intelligent enough to actually reject a CV. But, like the system I used would display CVs to us in a fast loading format, so that we could just quickly hit kind of reject or shortlist and it would display the next CV to us. And CVs that had really complicated layouts would come through looking quite jumbled. And I would have to then make a further step to say, okay, I want to see the original CV. And sometimes if you don't see what you're looking for in that jumbled version, you might not click to view the original CV. And so that's the risk when you've got a really complicated layout. If a recruiter is using an ATS system, it might not be passing through correctly, and it might be displaying in a kind of jumbled way. And I think also if a recruiter has a database of candidates, if you're using a very complicated layout with columns and like you say, Excel kind of tables and stuff like that, if they're going onto their database and they're searching for candidates, again, you might face issues with that information in your CV. It's not being extracted properly when they're conducting a search. So yes, I think for the most part, most recruiters are still in Dubai, at least, looking at every CV that comes through. So, you don't need to worry about ATS rejecting your CV, but definitely having a single column layout, keeping it a bit more straightforward. I think it's easier for the recruiter anyway. I think recruiters prefer that, but it also is going to just stop you encountering any issues as well with any software that they might be using.
Great point. And to add on to that, right? That's what there is a misconception that ATS rejects it. It does not. Once you are on that bucket, you sit on it forever. And sometimes I've had my clients being denied for the first one. They didn't even get the response. And all of a sudden, 6 months, recruiters are reaching out saying that, hey, I think you're probably a great match for this. And when you find out you were on the system already, you were not the match at that time. Now you're the match based on whatever they selected at the back end, right? So and that's a misconception. And I'm glad that you touched on it. Like, make it easier for a recruiter. And that's the whole thing. Make it easier. There's like, you go through it. And I'm working with one of the ATS system for teaching you as well, right? I'm trying to understand, like, when I'm recruiting for certain things, like, how it's going to pass the information. It's an eye opener. So it's all based on what I do at the end. And that's why people don't know, what do you put it at the back end? Keywords, the match and everything, right? You're on the system, but it's for me. And there's a difference between must have and nice to have. So I tend to put nice to have, so that way I get more matches. But if you are so strict as a recruiter, employer, must have, you might not make on that. So it's really, really important for you to look at the job descriptions and try to actually assemble those keywords and see where it fits. And as Hannah's point, make it easy for a recruiter. We're not going to go there and sit down and look at everything. Make it easy for us to actually scan it. That's why human eyes matters as well. So if it's not parsed properly, it's not translated, then you know what, I'm going to move on to something that I like it on my eyes, and I'm going to go and do the interview, right? Is that my understanding, Hannah? Like, are we on the same page?
Yeah, I think, that kind of, there's a thing of recruiters spend 6-7 seconds, whatever it is, reviewing a CV. And, sometimes I would spend a lot longer reading a CV and understanding it, but definitely you want to grab that attention right away. And if you've got if you're using a format where some of your best information is on the second page, or it's in a column and it's in small font and people can't read it, you risk them missing that key information and then moving on to someone else, especially if you're applying for a role where there's 2,000 applicants and that there's lots and lots of people who are going to be qualified for the role. You really need to do what you can just to get their attention right away with that key information standing out, but in a format that's just going to be really easy to read, which is just top to bottom and left to right, not kind of putting things in unexpected places where they can't find what they're looking for.
That's so true. And I tell my client, like, have them at hello. have them at hello. Like there's no way, if they don't like you here, they're not going to go move down there, right? And another point that I want to talk about, which you really like, which there is a misconception on it. You know what? You're not going to be seen by hiring managers, like if you don't actually move through the system. And it all depends on how employers are recruiting. More like the major companies, Fortune companies, they have a mandate to review everything, whatever comes in. They are required to actually review everything and then scan it properly and give the interview to the best deserving one based on whatever they think. The human eyes are there. Yeah. And that's why you got to meet that system. It goes hand in hand, plus the hiring manager, plus the recruiter. So the hiring manager is the one who's going to give the interview, but the recruiters look at it as well. But I want to say to people is, you just don't sit in the system and nobody's looking at you. Like, you know what, there might be some employers, they're not doing that standard practice, but they're required to read it. And then if you make that top, that's where you got to land at. That's the whole thing, right? And then you move on. So I'm glad that you touched on it, because a lot of people think that, oh, my resumes are not seen. It's not seen because you're not writing it well enough. That's a reason for it. There's no reason to be seen. Like they're scanning 1 second or something. You're not ending up on that recruiter's eyes, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I used to review, I think, every CV that came in. I definitely wasn't relying on some algorithm just to show me the top CVs. But yeah, if a candidate didn't go through, it's because I wasn't seeing that they met the job criteria on their CV. And actually, which is a good point as well, I think it can be really frustrating when you're applying for loads of roles and you feel like you're not getting anywhere. But I find that what a lot of people do is that they type in a keyword into Indeed and then just hit apply, 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 apply. Now, if you're doing that, you may not be the right fit for a lot of those roles. And then you're getting all those rejections and it's really disheartening. But I think it's much better to just focus on really understanding the job description, knowing that you're a good fit for that role, and then applying. And if you take the time to do that, you're not going to have this situation where I've applied for 500 roles and I've not heard back, because you're really narrowing down your search to the roles where you know that you've got a good chance. So if I was recruiting a finance lawyer, I might advertise the job, I'm looking for a finance lawyer, and I would inevitably get 100 CVs from accountants for that job opening. Well, they're going to get rejected because I'm looking for a lawyer. I'm not looking for an accountant. I can't possibly hire an accountant for that role. But I think what those people have done is they've seen the word finance, or that's come up in their job search because it's got the word finance, and they've hit apply without reading the job description. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Recruiters, yes, do need to take the time to evaluate the CVs, and I hear a lot of complaints against that, but people looking for jobs also need to just take the time to make sure that they are a good fit before applying, so that they don't get frustrated and disappointed with the process.
You're so right. Thanks for bringing that up. And that's called defining your niche market, right? Like, having that marketing plan so clear that you know what you want and you're going to go and stick to it the minute. And going back to that, you're applying, can you imagine you're applying with the same company, finance comes in, the accounting comes in, and then let's say the risk comes in, 3 of it, but you're expert on one thing, let's say finance, right? But you feel like, you know what, I can meet the risk too. But then you're not you probably know bits and pieces, but then you're not probably known as expert on it, right? Or accounting and finance, it's a macro level, but what in accounting, what bookkeeping, taxes, it's even niche. Just because you're into accounting, that does not mean that you can do it all. There are so many variables within it. And then I've seen people going in there and applying and getting rejected. And there's one dream job they've always waited within that dream company, and they hit that apply, they meet it. Guess what? Their resumes are already in there on the system. Yeah. They're not going to be called because employers are going to be like, why is this person applying for a different kind of role? What are they trying to do? And that's a red flag. What do you think about it?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I remember, and I did a blog about this on my website, because I remember when I first was working in recruitment, sitting next to a colleague, and actually at that point, every application was coming directly into our email inbox. So you can imagine, just ping, 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 you'd get all the applications in. And she was getting really frustrated because somebody applied like in succession to 10 different roles that she had advertised. And she's saying, well, there's no way this person is a match for all these roles because they're spanning like a whole different, all these different kind of responsibilities, levels of experience. That person would have been much better off finding the one role that they were really suited for, just applying for that, and then sending her an email and saying, look, I've applied for this role. I think I'm a really good fit. Here's why. But because they'd applied for 10 roles already, then there's that kind of negative perception of, well, this person doesn't know what they want, or they're not reading the job descriptions. So I think it can definitely do you a disservice if you have that kind of scattergun approach to applying for positions.
Absolutely, and that applies to every market, whether in Canada or Dubai. So it's the same kind of framework. We all talk about it, and it does not apply differently in Dubai's world as well. So, which is fantastic. Now, question for you. I have one question. I think I want to pick it up from here. Maybe you can answer that. Let's see here. Kriti says it's so important to define the role you want. That's so right. You pick one and you just move with it. That's your niche. There's one role that there was something about disability here. Okay, do you want to take on that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I wonder what type of disability this person's talking about. I'm not aware of any particular difficulties in Dubai for people with disabilities to find a job. I guess it depends what types of positions you're applying for and what the disability is. I mean, I imagine there are certain instances where, it might restrict you from actually doing the role, but as long as you can still do the job, as far as I'm aware, there shouldn't be any kind of discrimination in Dubai against that, or any reason why not. It'd be interesting to know a bit of further information there in terms of what this person's kind of referring to or encountering. I don't know if you've got any insight on that in terms of elsewhere in the world, if there's any issues in Canada.
You know what? I wanted to ask you, that leads me to the different question. So in Canada, obviously, it's same thing, meaning like, if you can do the job, you know what? That's a discrimination. So you're not going to be disqualified based on what you have. It could be mental health. It could be anything hidden as well, right? Like, you're not even allowed to ask that questions. Literally, you don't even have to disclose it. There is a requirement as well. The quota system in every employer that, so let's say a senior leadership role, women, like, they need to be represented on that role. And then disabilities as well. There's a quota that you have to hire certain people within that. It depends on like, the industry type and corporations type and business type as well. So there's a requirement. Anyone who doesn't follow, they are answerable, right? To whoever, right? So, but I don't know if Dubai has that system as well, that you are required to hire a certain percentage of, and anyone LGBTQ, like in everything, that depends on everything, right? Criteria. Do you have that as well in Dubai? But because Canada is really diverse and multicultural.
I mean, Dubai's such a new country, so they're still developing a lot of these policies at the moment. They are perhaps a bit behind in terms of more developed countries in terms of some of these policies, but I know they're definitely, every few months I hear of a new policy, a new agenda to try and kind of promote equality. They've really been, I think, trying to push more women into better roles, I think. But yes, they don't have as many policies surrounding that as more developed nations like Canada. And so perhaps sometimes that makes it harder if you're in a minority in Dubai to get a position compared to perhaps some other countries. But I think they are trying to kind of work on that and improve it. But yeah, I'm seeing this comment from Lavinia. I would say, Lavinia, if you're applying for administration roles and the disability doesn't impair you from doing that, I would wonder if that's maybe not the reason you're not being selected. it could potentially be something else. It might be an issue with the CV. I mean, I wouldn't think that that's something that you would mention on the CV in any case. So if you're not getting past that kind of first round in terms of being shortlisted for the interviews, then it is perhaps something else in terms of how you're presenting the CV, or maybe not having the right experience for the roles.
So question for you from Kriti, top 3 things you take into consideration before hiring a candidate.
Well, I wasn't hiring directly, so I was recruiting as an agency. So we would find candidates, we would send them to the employers who would then make the kind of hiring decision. But as a recruiter, when I'm evaluating the CVs, I'm really thinking about what the company's told me they're looking for, what their key criteria are. And it's really as simple as, does this person have the right skill set for the role that we're hiring for? And that's really just the main criteria. And I think, it does depend on what industry you're in. I mean, for me, I was looking for very specific experience, very specific technical knowledge for a lot of the roles. So, you really just have to kind of have that knowledge, have that background, have that criteria to be selected. And then when you're actually kind of interviewing the person or doing that kind of first initial conversation with them, it's then just, are they really interested in this role? Is this are they committed to this career path? It's more just thinking through those types of questions. Does it fall within their kind of salary expectations? Just very kind of practical things.
Okay.
I don't know about you. I don't know if you've had a bit more experience in terms of actually making hiring decisions, Tweta, if you've got any.
I was hiring all my life, probably it was more than 13 years. I still hire people when I need, especially I focus on freelancer. So now that I own my own business, it's kind of different. But when I was hiring in the corporate roles, it was all about a team and the fit. I was hiring, if I called someone for an interview, they already had me on they already had me on a resume. I liked them so much that I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm going to go and invite them for an interview. And unless they really, really suck at it, meaning I feel like I can't hire them because they're not the right fit within the team, because it all depends on the team that I have. So if I have a lot of extrovert and I'm probably hiring for someone who's introvert, who can listen, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to coordinate that, and some challenger, and someone who could actually take my work as well. Like I can sleep in peace if I go away on vacations. I'm looking for leadership skills, someone I can put them on an out of office reply. I'm looking at all those things that I can mold them for the role they're applying for, right? So it was not for technical skills, because obviously we would be training. There's a training department. They would be training them anyway, right? Someone who can cope up with the stress, because it was banking role, right? I wanted someone who I can depend on, someone who can show up and not just go like, I can't work this day, I can't do these things, you know what I mean? So someone's really who are flexible kind of thing. But it's changed now, because now I'm an entrepreneur. If I'm hiring for someone, then I am hiring for technical skills. If I'm hiring for SEO expert, then I need them to show me what they have done. I'm not going to teach you. I'm not expert on it. I'm paying you for it. So I'm looking for pure technical skills. Otherwise, I'm not going to give you my live website in your hand, right? I don't have a time. So it depends, I think, on the industry, and depends on the type of role you're hiring for too. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's certain roles where you have to have the right qualifications and the technical skills to be considered, in which case, you really need to make sure you've got that before applying. But yeah, there's definitely other positions where things can be taught and people are hiring more just for attitude and soft skills. So yeah, it really does vary from role to role in terms of what the hiring manager is going to be paying attention to and what's going to be most important to them.
Yeah, and then when I hire normally, I put purposely, because I do the resume and I don't want to be harsh on people like, okay, you don't know how to do the resume, right? I get their pain. So I always make sure I make a point. I'm a huge on cover letter. I will talk about that. I would always say, give me the cover letter, right? Because that's what tells me like, who they are, whatever it's not on resume, their style, their content. And I literally have created a role based on the cover letter in my company just last year.
Wow.
Like, yeah, I did it just because it was a newcomer, and she was amazing. So I just hired her on the spot. I created the role for her, right? So, and she's into HR and she's done well for herself, right? It was all based on cover letter. I'm kind of that person, and I'm not going to judge you on resume because I already know like people fail when it comes to resume, but I'm going to give you extra time. And you know how many people even wrote the cover letter? Probably like 1%. So that's why it's really important for you to read the job description. I want the cover letter. Give me a cover letter. And there's a reason I want it, because I'm giving you a second chance to market yourself. What are your thoughts on cover letter?
That's really interesting. I mean, that sounds like the way you're approaching it is just fantastic. I think that point of paying attention to the job description and whether it's requesting a cover letter is really important. So definitely, if it's requested, you need to write one. I think when people just attach a generic cover letter to every application, I'm not sure that that really makes much difference to their application, because a recruiter right away can tell, oh, this is just a copy and paste cover letter. So if you are going to write a cover letter, I think you need to show that you've got a real passion and an interest in the company. You need to talk about why you applied for that particular role, what appealed to you about that company, and you need to make the cover letter something different from just kind of a reorganized version of your CV. So yeah, it can definitely help you stand out. But if you do it right and if you take the time to make it something that really talks to the hiring manager and addresses their unique needs, I think a generalized cover letter attached to every application, I'm not sure that really makes a difference.
Yeah, and that's exactly why, like, I could sense it from miles away. It's like, oh, it's copy and paste versus someone really makes an attempt. Why them?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have a role, but you know what? I have some work for you. Do you want to, like, work for me? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And on the spot, I was sold on it, and it was all based on cover letter. And sometimes we, as a hiring manager, we as an entrepreneur as well, we just take a chance on people that we believe in, and it's all about hiring for good morale and ethics as well, right? And imagine I'm hiring someone for a website, and you are trying to hire someone for your, by the way, YouTube channel. We can talk about it too later on. You have a YouTube channel, you can drop the link in there. So, you're not going to give someone, like, that's a technical skill, someone your YouTube channel without actually looking at the work. And a lot of people, what are your thoughts on this one? I'm going to go into this one. Some folks, career coaches out there or some expert feel like, when you produce the work and show the people or employer, like, let's say mini project or something like that, you show them, you should be doing it because you should be paid for it. They should pay you for it. But some people are on like, you should absolutely go ahead and showcase what you can do for them, so that way they know who you are. So what are your thoughts on it? I have my own thought. We'll share.
I've seen a lot of, I know what you're talking about in terms of, don't send your CV, just kind of do this project for them and showcase what you can do. I think, for some people that works. I think the difficulty with this kind of career advice and all these different career advisors is there's not a one size fits all solution. So, it's important when you hear something like that to think, okay, is that applicable to me? Is that applicable to my situation? If you're an office manager and you're applying for office management jobs, that, I think, and if you kind of sent some kind of pitch or proposal to a company like that, they might not know what to make of it. I think it would seem a bit strange. Whereas if you had a good CV that showed your kind of office management skills, you applied for the role, that's quite likely going to land you the job if you're the right fit. So, equally, we talked about lawyers a lot. If you're a lawyer, you might not want to be doing that. Or if you're an accountant, that might not make sense for you to kind of do some proposal or some project. So I think this advice is not a one size fits all approach, and you need to just kind of think about does this make sense in my industry, even in the country that I'm in and the culture that I'm in? Are people going to be receptive to this kind of approach? Definitely it works for some people in some instances, but you've got to kind of figure out what's going to work for you.
Absolutely. That's amazing because, and as you said, it is the advice out there, and take it. There are so many advices for job seekers. I might have different advice that it might not work in Dubai's market, and it might not work vice versa as well, right? So it's better idea to actually reevaluate and then see what works. And you would not know honestly without testing it. And even when I teach, but again, like, you got to tweak it a bit and run with it and see, did it work for you? No, let's see how you can make it better. Or like, maybe it's not going to work this time. Maybe it's going to work until next time, kind of thing. That's a very good advice. Now, question for you. You have YouTube channel, right? Like, do you wanna give them a name? What do you do on YouTube?
Yeah, so we have a YouTube channel. If you type in the English meeting room, that will come up. I think it should come up as the first result on there. We talk about CV writing, about job search strategy. We've got a couple of videos on there, particularly about job search strategy for finding a job in Dubai. So for those of you who've got questions more about that, definitely check those out. We filmed 2 new videos. We haven't put any new videos up for ages because with lockdown and moving countries, it's just been difficult to do. But we filmed 2 new videos over the past few weeks. They'll be going up soon. So we really hope to be putting lots more content up over the next year, more regularly, just with lots of kind of job searching advice, CV advice, interview tips, etc.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen some of your videos. It's really good as well, guys. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel as well. Now, the other question I'm going to jump it in is, I have had some kind of questions, and it was Canadians wanting to move to Dubai. What do you like now that you've gone from that UK market to Dubai? What worked for you, and what are your tips for those people who want to go to Dubai?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it's a fantastic place. It's a really interesting place to be. It's really multicultural, and I think there's lots of really good opportunities there as well. It's kind of a really fast-paced country, and there's some really good employment opportunities for people. I think, if you're considering a move, then firstly, make sure you do your research. Find out if the job that you do or that you want to do is something that's kind of available there. It is quite a small marketplace, really. Dubai is a city, essentially. And the United Arab Emirates is essentially a collection of cities. So it's not, perhaps not every single role exists there, not every industry exists there. So kind of do your research and find out if the opportunities you're looking for are available there. And then I talking about our YouTube channel, we did do a video about the different types of jobs and the different types of approach, because as we said, there's no one size fits all strategy. And that's true for Dubai as well. So, definitely there are positions where you could be applying from your home country and the company will fly you across, will sort you out, will hire you from your home country if you've got a really in-demand skill set. There are other roles where there's already a lot of people in Dubai who have that skill set, where there isn't an appetite for employers to actually relocate someone. And in that case, if you're really serious about going to Dubai, it's probably worthwhile going there on a tourist visa and being available to interview in person, showing that you're already on the ground in order to land the opportunity. So it's important to kind of understand what the market's like in your job and kind of use the right approach in order to find something.
Awesome. I think you brought the valid point, and we have the hot jobs in Canada as well. And I get a lot of questions about how do we move from that market to here? And it's extremely tough. And it's when you're talking about that, you're dealing with the immigrations and a lot of requirements and stuff. It's almost next to impossible. If you're hot shot, you're wanted like crazy, Canada is not having that labor force at all, then you probably would be in a priority. We're talking about employer going through the hoops to advertise first for Canadian market. And if they don't find it, then only they can hire you based on, they have to make a case basically to hire an outsider, right? So in Dubai, what are the hot job that you felt like it's right away, it's so easy to get a work permit or something? Can you give us some highlight on it?
Well, it is a little bit different from Canada because you don't need to get a work permit as such to work there. Your employer will sponsor you for your visa. So if the employer makes a decision to hire you, whether you're outside the country or whether you're already in the UAE, the process is exactly the same for them to sponsor your visa. So from that perspective, it's actually a little bit easier. The only real difference is whether they want to pay to relocate you or not. So they'll only pay to relocate you if they can't find someone locally, because if they can find someone locally, they don't have to pay for relocation. And also, I think it's a safer option for them, because if someone's already in Dubai, they know that they kind of committed to being there, that they like the country. It's just easier. Whereas when you're relocating people, there's always the kind of risk that suddenly the spouse will decide they don't want to move, or there'll be issues, or they'll come and they won't like it and they'll go back. Yeah, it's less about work permits. It's more just about the kind of that relocation aspect. But it is easy, as long as an employer wants to hire you, as long as there's not any restrictions on your particular passport, then you will get a visa to work there. In terms of in-demand jobs, I think, you're looking at those kind of just more specialist types of roles, kind of highly qualified professions. So, and I think Dubai is always after people who've worked for top companies as well, and looking for people in that kind of senior space. So there's a lot of people in that kind of junior to mid-level management. But I think those instances where they might relocate someone is where they're looking for a CFO, or they're looking for that kind of real kind of director level management. And that's across all industries and across the board. So, people from top companies who've got that kind of top level executive experience, that's always something that's in demand.
Got it. Okay. So in Canada right now, for those people who are watching us from Dubai market and move to Canada, there are hot jobs out there. You can definitely look it into the Canadian government website. And if you want to know all about immigrating to Canada, whatever, I dropped in the link on the chat. There's a free resources. You can even download it in there. There is the job boards for Canada, and also the immigration's information's right directly taken out from the Canadian website, government website. You can go ahead and download that and see and research yourself. What is it out there that you can get the work permit, let's say, but it's going to be extremely hard to get that if you're not, if you do not have a status in Canada. And converting from visitor visa to work permit is extremely hard. And if you want to know how to do it, you are probably better off hiring the licensed consultant. And I know there was someone watching me, I think, I don't know, Muga, if it's there, you are there. Muga Razbhandari is one of the reputed licensed person that I personally know in Canada. You can definitely reach out to him, and he would be more than happy to guide you out when it comes to immigration advice. For Dubai, it's really easy, and I've been hearing that, and I'm glad, because you went through that situation. You can talk about it as well, right? So was it easy for you to find the job in Dubai? Right? How long did it take you, Hannah?
Do you know what? I had 2 job offers in a week when I went. I don't know if, that was 8 years ago. I don't know if it's quite as kind of fast at moving at the moment, but what I did was arrived on a visit visa, rolled up in Dubai with a kind of suitcase with all of my stuff, and I had been applying for roles before that from the UK. And I'd lined up a few meetings with recruiters for when I landed in Dubai, and I'd lined up a few interviews as well. So I think I had maybe 5 or 6 interviews that first week. But I was very fortunate. I think I knew what I wanted to do. I think I had a skill set that was quite in demand at the time. And I was really kind of applying for roles that I guess I was quite well qualified for. My husband, on the other hand, he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do when we moved to Dubai. He'd been working in the banking industry in the UK, in retail banking. And in Dubai, to work in retail banking, you really needed to speak Arabic, which we don't. And so it actually took him 3 months of kind of figuring out what he wanted to do, and he got a job just through networking, really. So we got to know lots of people, we got to make friends there, and it was through a connection that he kind of landed his first role in Dubai. So that, it's, when people ask me, well, how long does it take? It really just does depend. It can move very quickly if you're applying for the right types of roles and you've got that right experience. If you're not sure what you want, or you're applying for something a bit less in demand, then it might take you quite a bit longer.
Okay, good to know that. I think it's universal. So you need strategy, and it's not applying online would not help you. You definitely have to build a network, especially in a new country, right?
Yeah.
And now, one last thing before we leave. Cultural, what's the most shocking thing in Dubai? Like cultural shock coming from UK to Dubai. What was it? Give me like 2 or 3.
Well, it's hot. It's not so much a cultural thing, but it's just more of a that's one of the biggest things to get used to. So in the summer, it goes all the way up to 50 degrees Celsius, and it's just boiling hot, and you go outside and it's so humid that everything steams up, and that takes a while to get used to. I think the driving was the hard thing for me. So I'm quite a apprehensive driver, even in very kind of calm driving situations. And Dubai is just very, very fast, really big, 6-lane highways where everybody's just kind of crisscrossing. That was a real shock for me. I used to hold the wheel so tight that my hands would be like red by the time I finished driving. So that took a little while.
Okay, well, good to know that. Is it rough driving there, or is it like people are behaving when they're driving? Is it aggressive driving?
Yeah, it's very fast, very fierce, and just really big, fast roads. And you've got, as I said, it's totally multicultural. So you've not got kind of one driving style, and you take that for granted, because I think in your home country, you kind of can anticipate how people are going to act and what they're going to do on the road, because everyone has the same kind of like driving culture and style, and knows how you should act in certain situations. But when you've got people from all over the world, you just never know what a driver's going to do. You can never be on alert for anything.
That's so funny you said it. Toronto is really, really diverse and multicultural. Like when I landed from US States in Toronto, like a long time ago, 20 years ago, I was like, I didn't even know if I was in Canada, because everybody looked like one of us, one of me, right? I was like, this is pretty diverse, And they were all, driving is so aggressive. And we used to tell people, if you can drive in Toronto market, you can drive anywhere. It's like in New York City sometimes, right? It's pretty aggressive. Good to know that. Listen, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. And before I leave you, do you want to add anything at all from your side? And how can they be in touch with you?
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for having me, Sweta. I hope for those watching that you were able to find something helpful in there. Particularly if you're interested in moving to Dubai, then you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'll just put something in the comments so that I'm linked there. And do feel free. I think my profile, you can just send me a message on there, or you can email me. So my email is on my profile as well, or it's hannah@theenglishmeetingroom.com. So that's the best way to get in touch. But if you want to find out kind of what my services are, then you can head to my website, which is theenglishmeetingroom.com, and that's got all the details on there. So that's a good first place to go just to find out more information.
Okay, I'm assuming you're maxed out. You have like more than 500,000 followers, so you want people to follow, right?
Yeah, you know what? I've quite early on, I set it so that the first option was follow and not connect. So I think I'm at like 20-something thousand connections. So I've got a few a few thousand left.
Okay. Yeah, same here as well. I just pick and choose, and then it depends on, like, if I can guide them, then I just go ahead and connect them. That's a good strategy to have, not maxing out, right? That always helps. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you have any questions for Hannah, feel free to reach out to her directly on LinkedIn. If you have any questions for me when it comes to job market in Canada, if you're moving in Canada with the legal status, I'm happy to go through the 15 minutes discovery call. You can book it online, teachinju.com under appointment, and we can jump in the Zoom call and see if I can help you transitioning in the Canadian market, because I especially work with the newcomers. Also, you can follow me for career advice. And if you have any questions, I have open messages. You can send me the open message. You don't have to connect with me, and we can go from here to DM as well. And Hannah, thank you so much for joining in. I learned a lot, actually, why the pictures is okay. So why the personal information is okay as well. It all depends on the employer's market. That was fantastic, because I was confused myself as well. And thank you so much for sharing everything about Dubai's market. And hopefully people are going to reach out to you if they have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Sweta.
Thank you. Bye, guys. And share this video if you feel that this was something that you learned something from Hannah. Please feel free to like and share, so that way people can really, really learn about how the resume world works in Dubai, because people need to know this. Bye, guys.